Perfect. Let's get going. Thanks everybody for joining. Today we're talking about learner autonomy. We're from Thrive, the stand here. We're the all-in-one learning and skills platform. And I guess in the last 6 months since we repositioned away from LXP to a skills platform, what we've seen is a huge drive in self-directed learning. So today what we're going to talk about is how people are taking ownership for their own skills, their own development, and we're going to share some of the insights from a series of customers. So I'm Josh, Chief Sales Officer here. In the last 4 years, we've kind of grown to 300 plus customers from Sky, Nando's, and other great brands around the world. And we've learned a great deal, so I'm really excited to share a lot with you today. I'm joined by Helen.
Yeah, thanks Josh. Hi everyone, I'm Helen Marshall, Head of Learning at Thrive, and I kind of branch in between a lot of different things within the business. So I look at obviously the learning side of things, our content, but also how we're working so well with our customers in terms of how they're using skills, the platform and our content as well. So I think it's quite a timely conversation. There's a lot going on at the moment around autonomy and skills within the industry. So I'll be keen to obviously hear some of your thoughts towards the end and dig into it with Josh in the Q&A at the end of the session. So we're going to cover 3 main things today. So what we've seen, why it's happening, and how you can make an impact. So we'll look at what our customers are doing and some examples of how they're using skills on our platform and some of the really good examples that we can share with you. But also thinking about why it's happening. So as I mentioned, this conversation is really pertinent in the industry at the moment. So what shift has happened? So we'll dig into that a little bit as well. And then also look at how you can make an impact. So some of the things that you can do or be aware of in your own work and your own organisations towards the end of the session. So some good stuff to cover.
Perfect. So as I said, we repositioned to a learning and skills platform at the start of the year. So a lot of the functionality is really there to enable people to work towards skills. The learning technology market and the HR market has often been a very much top-down driven competency framework approach. So the organisation says, here are the competencies you're going to work towards, but with skills, within Thrive at least, we've gone for an agile skills approach. So some of the things that we've seen with Sky, who use Thrive across 30,000 people, Ted Baker and Sumo, some of the key things here. So number 1 is the bolstering the adoption of core skills. There are many core skills that you work towards as part of your job. Many of us here will have core skills that we work towards every single day. And it's all about enabling people to work to those skills, but also recognize that there are many skills in your job that you don't necessarily know what they are, but you work towards them. So people can be very much driven by the skills that they're interested in doing within Thrive. The impact on project success has been huge, especially since COVID. People have now started to work remotely, and the project success in terms of working together as an agile team remotely has been critical. So for example, Sumo, they're a games developer, and now they work remotely, and that's been critical to ship games very quickly to their customers, such as Microsoft, etc. So working on a very much agile basis to deliver project success has been critical. And the big thing here is providing opportunities for progression. So what we're seeing is that talent mobility is more critical than ever. And this, by defining people's skills internally, people can go for new jobs, projects, opportunities internally. By defining the skills they're working towards, we recommend a new learning and progress in their certain career based upon the skills that they're seeing. And one of the big things here is recognizing that having agile skills is very different from a top-down approach. So agile skills play a huge role now in people accelerating their career quickly. So for example, as I said at Sumo, what they've done recently is they've given their developers autonomy to develop games such as Hitman, Assassin, all these games that children and many of us here might play. Give them projects, give them MVPs, and let them quickly develop new skills to ship those games out to the audiences. And people are developing skills now at the point of need. So before it was almost like, here's the skills you're working towards and go do it. But now what we're recognizing is, especially in the technology space, people need to work to skills ever quicker. So with technology now, there's new code being released, new ways of programming, for example. And Sumo are really recognizing that agile skills are helping people feel more valued, especially in a competitive landscape. In terms of, it's harder to attract and retain talent now, so allowing people to work towards those skills is critical.
I think just to mention, Josh, before we move on, in terms of Sumo's approach to agile skills. They're actually recognizing, like you say, that there are many skills that they need to recognize and allow people to work towards, but that they don't necessarily know what they all are at the moment. So they've set up some kind of key focus, almost experiments within some of their studios to run, through these skills and think about what people need to develop, and almost play it back on a bit of a feedback loop with the skills that they're developing. And I think they're really, really good at, Sumo are particularly good at that kind of iteration, and I think taking people's feedback on board and thinking, well, we've had the chance to learn, I don't know, let's take leadership because it's on the very broad category there, but let's take leadership as a skill, and think about the levels that they have to go through to get there within these kind of little workshops and experiments that they're running. So it's something that they've recognised that needs iteration, that needs focus groups, that needs feedback, and I think that's an important part of this journey, right, for a lot of our customers. So why is it happening? So I think, as I mentioned at the moment, this seems quite pertinent within the industry at the moment. Gartner's HR report called out talent mobility as a key kind of focus area, and the fact that people are leaving their jobs for lack of development opportunity as quickly as they're leaving for lack of compensation, and that part of that development opportunity is around being able to develop certain skills, having goals to work towards. So I think it's a real key driver here, making organisations think about what it is that makes someone successful in their role, and then thinking about how they can apply that to different sectors within the same business, different departments, and how those skills then become really transferable. But I'd just like to take a moment to think about our own job descriptions, our own roles and responsibilities, how many of the skills that we actually have and have developed within our organisations are listed on those job descriptions, because they're probably not, there might be a few of them, but actually really are all the things that you are skilled at included on your roles and responsibilities in those job descriptions. So if we start thinking even to the hiring process, are we sending out the right message with the type of descriptions that we're using to attract the right talent? And who might we be missing by using certain language? And it might just be a key takeaway there to think about some of those things and the type of skills that you currently need, but then kind of future thinking to what the business might need further down the line as well. It also provides the opportunity to think about what makes you valuable as well. So what skills do you have and have you developed that weren't listed on that job description right at the beginning? What are you working towards in your role that would be transferable within your business? So there's a recognition needed from a management level to know what skills are relevant within their teams, but then also on a personal level as well. What do you want to work towards, and how do you develop yourself as an individual as well? And I think one of the things that ties into those learning strategies is the idea of human skills, power skills, soft skills, whatever it is that you want to title them. They're the things that really happen in the in-between moments between the more, I suppose, practical skills that you might have for your role. And these are the things that are really important to things like leadership, as I mentioned earlier, and career progression, and being able to think about what that looks like within your organisation, what it means for you as an individual, is really important. So I think another thing that I just want to reiterate is that idea that as businesses and as leaders and then as managers of teams, we do need to be able to identify what it is that makes a team effective, and that our platform allows people to do that, to recognise what things people are searching for, what they're looking for, and how you build that into the certain skills that you saw on the other slide there that you can work through in different levels. But then there's also the idea that an individual can come onto the platform and say, well, actually, I want to start learning about presentation skills. So they can then take that control of their journey and decide how they're going to develop that, and the platform will be able to deliver the right content to them in order to do that in a really clear and progressive way. The Red Thread research report, I don't know whether any of you are familiar with Red Thread, but they're a great source of research. They recently used a skills report, released a skills report to highlight how this kind of balance needs to be struck within organisations, and it is something kind of really important to the whole overall success of a learning culture, is that balance between manager and team, and how you feed into the organisational goals as well as individual performance-related focus as well. So as I mentioned, in terms of learning strategies, if you can just go back a slide, sorry Josh, thank you. Sources of data that can feed into this would be around, like I said, job descriptions, but also talent profiles, job histories, LinkedIn collaboration sites. You can be drawing data from all those places to figure out what it is that people need in those particular instances, and feed them into how you would approach that on your platform. Just want to call out a little bit of research that McKinsey did called Defining the Skills Citizens Will Need in the Future World of Work, which was released last year. So they have this wordy title, which is Distinct Elements of Talent, Skills and Attitudes, instead of just skills. So it is quite a lengthy title, but you can't quite read this text, but they focus onto 4 key areas, which are cognitive, interpersonal, self-leadership and digital. And 3 out of 4 of these areas, really interestingly, are those human skills, those power skills, those soft skills that you need to be able to develop, the stuff that is traditionally much harder to get control of and to measure and to put on a platform. So it's thinking about how we've done that and how we do that continuing with customers as well. And it shifts that focus away from formal talent and that competency-led framework, like Josh mentioned at the beginning, towards the idea of more informal skills, what you're learning on the job, what you as a person need to do better, and making that part of the culture within an organisation as well.
So I guess the big takeaway here is about how can we make impact, and what we've seen is kind of 3 core things. The first thing is goals. Within the Thrive platform, what we've built out is a goal setting tool. We're all very familiar with goal setting in terms of OKRs, objectives, those types of things. And from a goal perspective, it's really important that people can reflect on the goal. So you're assigned a goal at team level or individual level. People can share evidence against that goal, share feedback, and coaching can take place very naturally and organically within the platform. So number 1 is encouraging that managers set smart goals, ones that are very realistic and people that can work towards. And I think that's both at a team level and individual level. Goals are very much something that's going to be linked to a business KPI, right, or an objective. So it's very important that it's done at the team level and the individual level. But the really interesting thing that we've seen is, of course, you can work towards a skill. If I'm working towards a skill of presentation skills, for example, yes, I can watch videos, listen to podcasts, go through presentations about developing a skill in that area. But the way you actually get better about that area is through reflection and those types of things, right? And goal setting is huge to that. So what we're starting to do now is really identify trends that are emerging when it comes to skills and goals and the correlation around that. So for example, if you set a sales team a series of goals, for example, linking that towards a certain level of skills and then measuring the data, making correlation against the business KPIs and the learning objectives into native dashboards and platforms that are many here today, or using things like Power BI or Tableau, Looker, Domo, etc., and start to make the correlations against business objectives and learning objectives. The second thing is user-generated content, but also campaigns. So by leveraging campaigns within platforms like Thrive and many others here today, you can space out the learning, you can schedule it to be released at set times based on the data that you see. I guess the industry's had a huge problem in that usually everyone builds content, you build an e-learning course, you build something, you upload it to the LMS, and you hope everybody comes, but that's not reality, right? So by looking at emerging trends around campaigns, you can actually schedule at the right time to the right audience, basically following marketing styles in terms of how marketeers promote learning to their consumers. So number 1 is producing resources and campaigns that are very driven against skills and against goals at the right time to the right audiences. And that can be out to different personas, different devices, and different styles of content to really, really engage people. And campaigns are a brilliant way to give focus around that topic. Rather than just uploading a course, why don't you space the content out Monday, Wednesday, Friday in different formats at the right time? So they're a brilliant way to do that. And the user-generated content piece is really where things come into play. So again, rather than building a long course with animated characters and that type of thing, why don't you just go direct to the expert, record a 2 to 3 minute bite-sized video on that exact topic and share it in a campaign to really create that learner autonomy. So that's the big thing that we're trying to do there. And as I said on that first piece around goals, it's all about measuring the impact. Given what's happening in the world today, the economy, I don't want to make doom and gloom about this, but it's more important than ever that L&D prove their value. And measuring impact, not just learning impact, but business impact is going to be critical to stay ahead of the game, to remain competitive, to attract talent, retain talent, all those types of things. So one, we have very simple objectives. And Helen, I guess you've been seeing, working with customers, kind of starting by dipping your toes in, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's almost a hesitancy around what data could be and thinking kind of big picture about what that data is. But actually it's much easier to start thinking about, yes, those like long-term goals, but what are the really short-term goals and how do you kind of break that down into manageable steps that need to be reiterated or iterated on, that need to be revisited, and thinking about just the smaller picture essentially, which helps you to think a bit more short-term with that longer-term vision as well. And I think that's been like a hard lesson for some people to learn, I think.
And what we see is different levels of maturity within L&D, within different organisations. Some organisations really want to start driving self-directed learning and learner autonomy, whereas many others are still just pushing courses at people. So when it comes to data and measuring impact, sometimes we say start small, identify a very clear area that you're going to measure, and just start from there. Other customers at the other end are extremely progressive. And like I said, they're bringing in learning data, business data, and really correlating how skills are emerging, what content is emerging in terms of what content needs to be developed by using external tools like Power BI, Tableau, etc., and being really, really powerful in terms of leveraging that analytics to create impact.
So I think just to kind of summarize everything we've spoken about and to also touch back on user-generated content there as something that really does drive cultural change within an organization. The examples that Josh shared in terms of Sumo Digital and Sky have really focused on what knowledge they have within their teams that they can bring onto the platform and allow access to for everybody. And part of that is, like you mentioned, those small videos that people can record to share their knowledge. And we can't stress enough how important that is in driving that cultural change for people, seeing that message kind of snowball and escalate within the platform, but then also socially within businesses as well. I was having a chat with a customer yesterday who said that she often walks past a forgotten population within her college, 50 to 60-year-old men who work in the estates team, who actually are using the platform and actually talking about what they've done on there and getting quite competitive about the scores that they have. And it was really, that's not specifically related to skills, but it's that part of being able to see that and hear that actually shows that there's a culture shift taking place within their organisation, and that's exactly what we want to be focused on, and that's what UGC allows.
And I think a lot of that comes from creating an environment where it's okay to share knowledge very quickly. You know, in many organisations, especially regulated industries that we work within, you see the place where it's like L&D can only share this content. And that's the way we've done things, but what we need to really do is give the trust and the autonomy for people to actually share knowledge very quickly. Every platform now has governance features in there to flag, remove content very quickly. But if you give that autonomy for people to share content at scale very quick, it has the huge impact which we've been talking about.
And I think that just linking into these ideas, we're thinking differently about that top-down approach to skills. We're thinking about what feeds into your performance as an individual or your team's performance as well. And coming back to the data piece, how those KPIs can, you think about those in terms of the skills that you need and how you link it in together. So I think overall, adopting an agile approach to skills allows people to feel empowered. So like I said, from a team level or from an individual level, but also allows you to leverage data in a micro and a macro way, essentially, which ultimately will all feed into cultural change as you understand your audience, as you understand the skills that are developing, and that you can react to the skills that develop in the here and now rather than trying to forecast or working in hindsight. So I think that might be the last slide. There you go. It sums it all up, what I just mentioned. We are currently at stand 36 there, so if you do want to carry on this conversation, do come over. But for now, we would like to open the floor to questions and spend the last 5 minutes or so just answering questions if anyone has any. We've got a mic if anyone wants to raise their hand.
Thanks. What kind of learning analytics do you capture? What granularity?
So if you talk about the micro to start with, it's tracking down to what you searched for, how you searched it in terms of how you found it, how long you spent on it, seconds, minutes, probably not hours, but seconds and minutes. If you pinned it, liked it, shared it, all those types of things, who you shared it with. And then at the macro is pretty much everything. Completions, quiz assessments, completions, all that type of thing. All the way through to correlating it against, like we said, the impact that it's had. So like surveys, evaluations, and tying that all into dashboards. The biggest thing that we're doing at the minute is working with like retailers to actually prove an increase of average transaction value, customer NPS, those types of things. And I think bringing the business data in is critical now. Like looking at likes, views, number of shares doesn't really mean anything from an L&D perspective, right? But if we can correlate it against a business metric, that's the goal that everybody wants. So that's just the most interesting stuff. But otherwise, down to every click, like, share, view, through to the bigger stuff as well.
We have a data lab service as well that runs alongside the platform. So if there are specific things that customers need, we can really dig into it in that way as well. So basically, if you have an idea, we could probably do it. Any other questions if you want to raise your hand?
Any questions? Okay.
No.
Thanks for joining, everybody. See you
Thank you
soon.
all.
Thank you.